All right.
Okay, everyone, welcome to another episode of the Cloud Underground Podcast. I'm Laura.
I'm NATO.
Here we are.
Doing things.
Doing things. Got another great episode lined up for you today.
We're going to talk about the episode today.
We are. We're going to talk about our last episode today. And
That's right.
And all of the trials and tribulations that came with it. But first, let's talk about some news.
What's in the news?
What's in the news? What isn't in the news?
Oh, man.
Oh, man. Well, in our ongoing conversation about people returning to the workforce amidst the pandemic, sort of post-pandemic, but it's still happening, and that's a thing, you know? People don't want to go back to work.
No.
In an office, that is. People want to go back to work. People who aren't working do want to find jobs and want to get back to work. But people who are working and people who want to get back to work don't really want to go back to the office.
Yeah, for anyone who's had the chance to work from home, and then you've been doing it for a long time, and all of a sudden now you have to go back to the office. And what if you decided to move because you're like, well, it's going to be a while. Why don't we move?
Yeah.
It happens. It's been happening.
Yeah, so what if you moved somewhere else because you were like, I don't know what's happening. I want to be closer to family, or
get out of the city, get away from the chaos.
Yeah, in a more peaceful place. And now your company is telling you got to come back to work in an office.
That's right.
What would you do?
Got to come back immediately, right?
Well, they're saying that this exact situation is potentially occurring, and that what is going to be happening is a great resignation. That people will be departing these positions at companies that are forcing their hands and seeking new positions elsewhere where they can work remotely, particularly in tech. This is definitely a thing that we're seeing in our audience and amongst people that we know.
People like to be able to work from home. It's just a thing. Like, there are a lot of reasons for it. I think it's more than just not wanting to go to an office, because it's like, you get more free time out of your day if you learn how to like manage your time structure. You get more flexibility in how you want to manage your day. You can choose where you want to live.
You can spend more time with your family.
That too.
And your loved one.
Surprise, surprise.
And your dog.
People actually like spending time with their family. Who knew?
Who knew?
That was surprising, I guess. Very surprising.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think we've talked about this a little bit in, like, past episodes, but I do really feel like people are sort of reevaluating what is important to them amidst everything that's going on. I mean, we certainly have, and we have
some people do
changes coming, and ourselves and our own, like, personal lives, and it's like, it's all good things, and... but I totally understand why somebody would want to like resign a position if they were like forced to go back to an office.
Yeah.
You can always find a job with another company that's not forcing people to do that, so.
Right.
Depending on your skill set, of course, but since our audience is more tech focused, so that's clearly more what we're talking about.
Exactly.
And speaking of being tech focused, and shifting jobs. Another article that I was reading recently was about how COVID is kind of changing where the tech hubs and where young tech talent is ending up going, instead of like immediately going for San Francisco or New York or maybe even like Boulder, Denver area, since there's a lot of tech happening in that region as well. That this is, people are distributing a little further afoot into places like Philadelphia and
because they can.
Yeah.
It's just a nice thing to be able to, like, being able to choose where you want to live and not having to be confined to, like, oh, well, I got to be near work, or I got to, well, and then there's the age-old conflict for those who existed pre-internet days especially, where it's like, well, if like one person in a family wants to go be close to work, then maybe someone else might have to make sacrifices and things like that, and maybe not be where they really feel like being, for me, at least for a short period of time. But nowadays, folks can just kind of choose where they want to live, and then it doesn't matter where the work is, so that, you know, we don't have to. Well, that dynamic is going to dissolve.
Yeah, it's definitely all changing, I think, and yeah, people are moving to different places. You know, looking at this graph from this article that I was reading that I'm referring to, that I'll link down below, it looks like people are moving to like Florida, of all places, for like tech, IT.
Florida
industry.
Seems to be a hot place to be these days.
Texas, a bit, but not so much Austin. It looks like Dallas, and Houston kind of having more growth, and it's interesting. And even like smaller communities, like little towns in Utah that are, you know, have little tech bubbles, are also
things are
springing up. So
things are just growing, and then
it's good. It's good to distribute all of that. It shouldn't all be concentrated in like one or two cities, especially with the, you know, the way technology works now. I mean, that's a lot of what we do is like cloud development and all of these things that make it, you know, super accessible to work remotely and to have a team like based everywhere and have them all like together and in a virtual space. And
there are different ways to connect with people.
It's so possible to connect from anywhere, as long as you have really good internet, which is also becoming so much more accessible, particularly in rural places where it necessarily wasn't available before.
And, you know, while it's, you know, some people do prefer being able to work with people and together and all that good stuff, you know, the world is proving that, you know, you don't necessarily need to see everyone you work with every day. It's still valuable to see people. It's still valuable to be around people and to be together with people. But, you know, we don't need to go to an office every single day and sit next to everyone and spend 24/7, 40 hours of our week together.
In the same, like, geographic location,
And I mean, it's not a bad thing.
To spend that much time, like, with somebody, you know, via chat or whatever, and you can always meet remotely, and there's so many ways to make it work.
Yeah.
As we've all proven over the past year.
Find ways to connect.
Yeah, it's so doable. The next thing we wanted to talk about, which of course has been well in the news lately, and I'm sure we'll still be kind of rippling through when this podcast actually airs. But as we're talking about this particular story, which is about the Colonial Pipeline that was recently hacked by a ransom attack.
Oh boy!
In criminal hacker news. Yes.
The ongoing discussion of breaches, people who are, and then of course the media calls them hackers, and really they're just like criminals. Because I mean, Laura and I are hackers.
Yeah, even I slip up a little bit and call them hackers, which I feel like is. It's a misnomer. Really, they're criminals, and no one should be doing these sorts of criminal activities.
It's hackers who will help find the vulnerabilities so that this doesn't happen again. That's what we need.
But of course, the other problem with all of this is, and this particular group of hackers were very, you know, specifically, were pretty adamant to say that they weren't doing this for like political reasons. All they wanted was money.
Just want some cash.
Which, guess what? They got it.
They got their cash.
They got $5 million or something. It was 75 Bitcoin, which is equal to about $5 million out of this pipeline company. So,
oh, goodness.
You know, that kind of behavior just encourages people to continue doing illegal
and then, you know, it's
ransomware attacks and
it's complicated because
such
in the media, like in social media, everyone wants to kind of like point fingers on like, well, whose fault is it? And really, it's an industry-wide issue. Like, just because a pipeline got hacked doesn't mean that your company's not getting hacked right now, right this second. Doesn't mean that our company's not getting hacked right now this second. It could be happening to anyone at any given time. But the real big point about it is like, if one company should be taking something seriously, or something was one person's fault, that needs to be something that everyone takes seriously, not something that like, oh well, if so and so. No, security needs to be everyone's job. Security.
Yes, absolutely.
Everyone's responsible.
Well, and along with that, you were telling me earlier today that Biden has signed some order to enforce two-factor authentication and
that's right,
encryption.
That's right.
So that'll be interesting. It'll be something we'll have to talk about more in a coming episode. But I think that, the government obviously doesn't condone people paying hackers, though obviously these private companies often do, even when told not to.
You know what's funny? I made a video that I don't know if we can link this, but talking about how to be, like, how to work remote like a cybersecurity professional. Like, what are the things to be safe? Mm-hmm. The two most important things to be safe is basically multi-factor authentication and encryption, which is like VPN and stuff. And that's now mandated. It's now mandated.
It's now mandated.
The two most important things to keep you secure in the modern climate. This is why it needs to be everyone's responsibility. Because if it comes from the top, then we have fewer breaches and fewer things, because it needs to be everyone's responsibility.
Absolutely.
It's like wearing a seatbelt. I don't know. You get pulled over for not wearing a seatbelt, and it's where it's
your
illegal
own fault.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever.
It's not that hard to do.
Put on a seatbelt.
Put it on. You'll be safer.
It's just like that.
Science.
Amazing. Safety. Who needs safety? No one wants safety online. People don't want privacy. They don't want VPNs and multi-factor authentication. They just want to give all their passwords
Well, I'm
away.
sure there'll be people who spin it into like some sort of breach of your privacy or civil liberties or something like that, even though it
probably,
really, I'm sure it's just
they'll probably try to say that the mandate is so that they can so that the someone else can collect your data or something, or I don't know. Someone's gonna conspiracy theories, they'll go to no limit. So anyways, we'll just leave it at that.
Yes. Well, anyway, enough of the news. Let's get into story time for the bulk of our episode. So this next part begins with a story. So it goes way, way back to episode number 2 of the podcast.
Once upon a time,
I was sitting at my computer trying to edit some files, and I was having problems. I couldn't get them to move from our server environment to my local environment. I couldn't edit them on the server environment. They wouldn't. I don't know. I was having problems, and it kept crashing my computer, and it was very frustrating. And I went to my resident
and then the world ended.
Data scientist slash amazing engineer slash data recovery ninja, and
data.
And NATO here was able to recover all of the files.
So basically we'd lost like hours of our lives, like hours of work.
Yes.
And then instead of wanting to re-spend all of those hours of our lives and hours of work, and exact moments we'll never be able to get back, we decided
to spend even more time recovering the files so that we can work with the original ones.
For days. No, it's good. I reconstructed the data. So when the relevance of that is, one of the things I always preached about in the past was just like, if you have a certain amount of knowledge and a certain amount of skills, that, knowledge is power and skills are money and yada, yada, yada. And I say things like that. But when it comes to things like being able to make sure that your data can be recovered and protecting your data, it's really nice when we put in a lot of work on these. So like the green screen and all that good stuff, great. It looks cool on the outside, but then it's like planning for how we're going to do these and making sure that the audio is good.
There's prep work and then there's post-production work.
So
I edit
all
of the videos, at least lightly. And
when you lose all that work, it's maddening.
The end matter and the music and all of that, that's all done.
Yeah,
editing.
And no one, you don't want to lose that, right?
But really, I mean, the bulk of the episode, obviously, which is us sitting here and talking, if that gets lost, then we're kind of at square zero. So
yeah, and so it's, one of the things that's really been beneficial, like especially in our journey when we didn't necessarily have as much money for like fancier resources and stuff, is just like if something happens to our data, generally speaking, I can probably get it.
Yeah.
Whatever we're doing could just be like toast, just about.
Well, we'll get to that. We'll continue
skill.
on with the story, which was that you were able to recover the files.
That's right.
We thought it might be just a fluke. We didn't think a whole lot of it, and went about our lives. We made episode number 3, which went off without a hitch.
That's right.
We recorded that one in shorter 20-minute segments or something like that, and so we didn't really notice. Everything worked fine. And then fast forward to episode 4, our last episode, which took a while to get out, partly because when I sat down to edit that episode, once again, we were having some corruption issues.
Data
Corruption.
All the data.
Should I put on screen the thing with the little the corrupted piece of data from the server that we did?
Do it.
I'll flash that on the screen and tell us what we're looking at with this.
Okay, so when you have hard drives, they hold data, and in order for them to hold data at a really dumbed down level, data is stored in what we'll call sectors, and every single one of the little like green squares or dots or whatever, those are sectors of data that make up, say, like a hard drive. And when you have one tiny little red sector that indicates that one has ended, its life no longer continues on with the rest of the sectors.
That's all it takes.
Then let's say that you have like some long video recording, and then it like a small portion of the video maybe ends up on this bad sector somewhere, somehow, some way. Then what can inevitably happen is then there goes the entire video, even if it was like gigabytes of or hours of work or whatever you want to, whatever, all
well,
of that.
And I will say that I feel like in the past, if something like this had happened to me, before we got married and before we were together, I would have been just like screwed. I mean, like, what do you? I would have just had to redo it. You know?
There's no other option.
Your data's corrupt. It doesn't work. You can't get the file. You don't know what to do. It's just like you can't load it into an editor to like chop off that like end bit that's messing everything up. It's just like there's just not much you can do if you're kind of the average person.
Yeah, and
I don't think I even would have known that you could recover stuff after it had been corrupted that.
It's what I learned in forensics. Most people don't know any forensic skills, but that's why I think skills are valuable. And then one of the things that comes down to is, what are we going to do to prevent these things? Because everyone, like, honestly, making sure that your business data is works and is going to be stable and is going to be reliable is a huge deal. And like all these years, we invented a new technology anyways. So we've created our own like cloud attached storage that's way more resilient than anything we've been using historically. And it's redundant. You can have it's made up of multiple hard drives, kind of like a RAID or a SAN. And if one goes down, then whatever, it's who cares? It'll keep running. You just go repair the drive, or you actually just unplug that one and then go find one that's the same ratings and the same everything and plug in a replacement. And if it takes a month till you can get the right drive again, or 2 months till you get the right drive again, and then maybe 2 others die, whatever, who cares? It'll keep running, and so if data gets corrupt, these systems basically raft data across each other and compare the data and make sure that it's all correct. So I don't have to worry about a sector on a drive ruining everything and mind you, we don't use one single location for all of our data. So if we lose something, we don't really ever lose much, but it's still frustrating when it's that's still hours of your life in one particular drive.
Yeah, well, and I think it also kind of begs the question too, since we're, talking about this in a larger context. Nathan, can you talk a little bit about why you think data recovery is important for companies to have? Why is it important to have maybe somebody on your team or some awareness of somebody who can like do data recovery for you.
Well,
like,
we can go right back to the pipeline thing. Like,
Yeah.
realistically, whether or not like someone gets hacked, you can have what are called disaster recovery plans, and you can include things like high availability. And let's say that you do have a ransomware come in that like swoops in and encrypts an ecosystem. I've had that happen before. And because, we had a strong, what's called disaster recovery plan, then it helps you make sure that everything gets replaced without having to spend the $5 million. Instead, you had a disaster recovery plan where you have data and images where you can then take the data in those, and I would write like a script that would fight the virus. And that was, I remember spending like a whole week where the script was just like running for a week and scanning the environment for anything that looked encrypted, and then immediately replacing it with the like most recent recognized version that was like unencrypted. And if you make your data stores like more resilient, I don't know. There's now whether or not that would have saved the pipeline situation. I'm not the expert on the pipeline situation. I'm not going to get into that sort of thing. Like, I used to work on dark sites, and that stuff gets really complicated. I'm not going to go make the finger pointing game or talk about what would solve this. All I know is that when we're talking about data that might get like encrypted, which can take down an entire company and an entire pipeline, maybe they did have a disaster recovery plan, and maybe they did have to use it. And if they did have a good one and used it and it still took 7 days, imagine if things were worse. And then maybe could that disaster recovery plan have been better? Things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has took some time for them to get it back online, and caused like major distribution issues all over the eastern portion of the United States.
Strong backups.
Like big problems. Yeah, so
strong backups matter.
Strong backups.
Strong,
Data
resilient
recovery.
backups.
Disaster recovery plans. These are all things that companies, especially large infrastructure companies, should probably have huge programs for.
Yeah, and
for dealing with.
It's expensive, but it's worth it. For some companies might wonder if it's worth the expenses for some of these things, but I mean, just wait till you get hit. If you've never been hit with an expensive disaster, or one that's really difficult to mitigate from, like, let's say that you could afford the fines and stuff like that, and maybe that doesn't matter. If you've never had like a situation that threatens you going out of business from like other things like failed compliances and Office of Civil Rights stuff, or like other compliance failures with like the Department of Trade and stuff like that. I mean, there's so many nightmares that can happen, and if you've never experienced one, you just haven't been in business long enough. I guess I say that, and folks might look at me and think like, "Oh, you're so young." My parents are entrepreneurs. I grew up around business people, for better or for worse, and like there's ups and downs with like business, but it's
and we're both serial entrepreneurs, have both started multiple companies, both
disasters
together
happen.
And separately, and can both attest to that.
Things go wrong.
On a smaller scale, Nathan, what if I am, say I'm like a college student or something, and I am put myself in like the shoes I was sort of in, like I have a big video project or like a thesis or something, and I lose a bunch of my like files, something gets corrupted, what can like kind of an everyday like average person do for data recovery? Are there people you can hire to fix your files? Is that possible?
If you didn't plan ahead of time, it's not even worth it.
Okay.
Like, you can, it's expensive. It's better to, like, at that junction, if it's important enough, like, it can cost like $2,000 to try to, and it might not even work.
So if you don't have a budget, then there might be options. But okay, so what do people need to do to like kind of try and plan ahead and prevent this sort of thing from happening?
Strong backups mean make sure that data that's most important to you lives in a minimum of 3 places, because inevitably there will be a time when 2 of those gets lost, most likely at some point. But 3 is the magic number. If you really don't want to, like, So that means like maybe you do have like a backup drive that you use. Maybe you have like the drive that you do like the computer that you do all your stuff on, and then maybe you have a cloud storage.
Cloud
maybe
storage
you just have
is
those
super
three
nice,
things.
especially if you can automate it so that it just kind of automatically is keeping everything really important that you're working on backed up in a cloud environment, which, you know, like what we do is redundant.
You could have like a home NAS even. You could have like a your main laptop or computer, desktop, whatever you have, and then like a NAS for the home data backups that helps just back things up regularly, and then like a cloud thing that just backs up the NAS, and like that. Absolutely. There you go. That's a backup structure.
There you go.
3 places right there. Boom, done.
Great recommendations as always. So there you go. Should we bring in Augustus and wrap it up? Where'd the little doggy go? I haven't seen him in a while.
Augustus.
He
went to bed early.
Oh, was he in the bedroom?
He's stretching right now. Oh, he's coming.
He's like, I was sleeping, guys. I was so bored.
Oh, he's wagging his tail. He's ready. Augustus.
I've been so bored.
Augustus, can you shake?
Then I just went to bed.
Inch back. Good boy, buddy. Come on. Oh, he has arrived.
It's a doggy.
He has arrived. The most dangerous creature of us all.
The chief doggy officer of the company.
The destroyer of worlds.
Augustus.
With a curly tail that wags.
Yes, he is ready.
He does not
make his
sit down.
Appearance.
He's gonna just stand.
He's gonna stand on Nathan here.
What he's gonna do tonight.
Well, if you think this dog is cute and you want to see more of him on future episodes of the Cloud Underground podcast, then you should probably like our video. Then you should most definitely subscribe to our channel. We've got all kinds of videos coming out.
Only because of the dog.
All the time. Well, he's a nice bone.
He's the only one that does anything.
I mean, let's be honest. People only care about cute dogs and cute kitty cats.
People don't care about computer science or cloud or security. They care about dogs.
If Augustus could
But that's not why we do this. We actually just
cloud engineering.
This is just our dog. So.
Cloud native and all of the things.
Here.
Edge computing. Then everyone would know it because who doesn't want to learn from an adorable dog?
He's got all the answers.
Yes.
He knows more about computer science than I do.
He does.
He's my #1 mentor. I think he's going to.
Oh, he's coming to me now.
He's migrating.
Here he goes.
It's dangerous.
Oh.
It's dangerous. Don't hurt yourself.
Careful.
Oh my goodness.
All right. Well, Good night and good luck. Have a lovely evening, says Mr. Augustus.
And stay safe from this creature right here. He might injure you.
Stay safe.
Yes.
Some vicious creature. Oh
Dangerous,
no.
Vicious.
Danger.
Vicious. Danger.
All right, guys. We'll see you next time.